Hello and welcome to another video. My name's Beth and I like to talk about knitting, crochet and yarn mostly. Today is a standard podcast episode, so I'm going to talk about everything that I finished in the last 2 months, some work in progresses that I'm still chugging away at, and some acquisitions. In the last 2 months, I have managed to complete a whopping 9 items. Now, this is not usual. I had finished it February, so I was fairly motivated to finish quite a few items. I also knitted a lot more accessories in this period, but I do still have 2 garments. So there's a good range of things that I have to show you today. And as I have so many of them, let's get straight into it. My first finished object is the Sinope socks by Audrey Borrego. I made these out of Woolcraft Superwash sock in the colour Harlequin and a little bit of scrap of the Onions Nettle sock yarn in the colour Cream. I used 65 grams of the Woolcraft and 13 grams of the Onions Nettle, and I used my trusty 2.25mm needle. I made the size 3, which is a 72 stitch circumference, and this pair of socks took me 19 days. I was pretty close to finishing these socks in my last update podcast, so this finished object won't be too much of a surprise. But I absolutely adore how these turned out. I really enjoyed working through the pattern. There was quite a good range of sizes, which I don't often find in sock patterns, especially free ones. But these had different charts for each of the sizes and I just really enjoyed it. I'm getting quite happy with my colour work tension, especially on small circumference. These are great. They fit over my heel and I managed to knit the colour work so that they weren't too tight. I did go up a needle size for the colour work section. I went up to a 2.75mm and I think they turned out great. One thing I don't particularly like about this sock pattern is the type of German short row heel that it called for. I decided to go with it because I wanted to try a different heel, but it omits some of the rows which make the heel a lot narrower, and I don't super love the way it looks, and I'm a little bit worried I might slide off my heel. If I make these again, I think I will either go back to my German short row heel that I know works, or I will swap it out for a heel flap and gusset instead. This yarn is pretty nice as well. It's definitely slightly rougher than some of the other sock yarns I have used, but I think these will make some really hard wearing socks. So I'm excited to wear these in the cooler months. My next finished object is my Mabel Meadow Cardigan by Famke by Mippy the Label. I used a yarn called Colouring Yarn DK, which is a hand-dyed yarn I picked up at the Knit and Stitch show. I used 525 grams of this yarn. I used both a 4.5 and a 3.5mm needle. I made the size 4, which is a size M, and this item took me 36 days to knit. You might recognise this cardigan from my Finish It February video. This is one of the very first items I finished because I only really had the sleeves left to go. This pattern was an utter joy to work on. It was the perfect amount of engaging and mindless, just the perfect Goldilocks pattern. I sized down my needles from what the pattern suggested because when I made my gauge swatch, it was a little bit too gappy for my taste. And I really love the fabric that created. It's a little bit more tighter weave, but it's not too bulky. It still has a really nice drape to it, and it's not too thick. I really enjoyed working with this yarn. It's listed on the label as a DK, but I think it's actually a little bit thicker. So the cardigan knitted up really fast. I tend to crop things anyway, so I already was knitting less on the body than the pattern suggested, and the arms weren't too long either, so this was a really quick knit for a garment. I alternated skeins throughout the entirety of this project, and I'm so happy I did. I can't perceive any harsh lines, and I think it creates a really nice mottle overall. I'm going to hold it up closer to the camera so you can see a bit more of the colour. I really like the nice mottled effect that it gives, and I'm really glad I can't see any lines. It's really hard to predict how a skein is going to knit up, and these were such a mix of the creams and the pink colours. I didn't know if they were going to create stripes or if they were just going to merge together, so I'm quite glad with how the colour palette turned out. Because this yarn is so soft, I have noticed a couple of pills already. I've only worn it about once or twice, but I'm hoping that the pills are just the initial shedding, but after a pill shave it will calm down a bit. But I'm going to keep an eye on this one and see how it performs over the months. Next up is my scrappy Musselburgh by Isolde Teague. For the yarn, I used scraps of fingering weight and fluff, quite a few of them. I used a total of 76 grams of fingering weight yarn and 38 grams of fluff. I used a 4mm needle for the entirety of this project, and this took me 26 days to knit. This is another one from my Finish It February video. I knitted this one up way faster than I anticipated. This was supposed to be a travel project that I would knit alongside my colourwork socks because I don't like knitting the colourwork bit on the train. I also wanted this to be a bit of a stash buster, so you won't notice on the outside of the hat, but if I extend outwards, haha, I've actually been able to use up quite a few yarns. So you might be able to notice that between here and here, I had to change the fluff I was using, and then right at the top, I had to change the fingering weight yarn I was using. But because this bit of the hat sits inside, it's perfect. You don't notice it at all. I'm very happy with the ability to stash bust with this hat, and I will definitely be doing it again. This is the third time I've made this hat. I still adore it, and it's the second time I've actually made it at this gauge with this set of needles, and the hat that I made before is my favourite hat, so I just wanted to do it again. I love the combination of the fingering weight and fluff weight of yarn along with the 4mm needles. It's a nice balance of it speeding up a little bit, but also the layers aren't too thick. It makes a really cozy hat with the 4 layers around the ear, but not too hot. If you're looking for a basic hat pattern that can become your mindless knit, scrap or not, then I highly recommend the Musselburgh hat pattern by Isolde Teague. My next finished object is the Blooming Lavender socks by Beth Knits. I knitted these out of 3 different sock yarns: the Life in the Long Grass sock yarn in the colour Wheat, the Creative Anarchy Hesiod base in the colour Shoreline, and a silly little sheep yarns fingering weight yarn in a green. I used 65 grams total for these socks. I used a 2.25mm needle, and I modified the pattern to have a 72 stitch circumference. And these socks took me 17 days. I was utterly obsessed with these socks. I don't usually knit socks this quickly, and I think the combination of them being really, really cute and me doing the colour work at home just meant I had more time dedicated to these, and that's why they knit up so quickly. I was really motivated to get these done. This is another one of my Finish It February projects, so you may have seen these before. I knitted these at Unravelled Festival as well, so I had quite a lot of time that I dedicated to getting these done, and I think they're stunning! I've had this pattern on my to knit list for a while, and I had these 2 contrast colours in my stash as scraps, and I knew I wanted to use them for the flower motif, and I was really happy to find this colour Wheat at Loop London in Angel. It has flecks of green which perfectly match the green that I had, and I think it works really well to blend all the colours together, but it doesn't take away from the flowers actually popping. I'm so happy with the colour combination of these. I had to do a little bit of pattern modding for these ones. So the way that the sizing works is that you increase your needle size if you want a bigger size. And I love knitting socks on my 2.25mm needle. So I adjusted the stitch count to 72 stitches so that I could keep using that. And then I increased, as the pattern suggested, for the colourwork section, so I was still in line with the chart. I did go up a needle size again for the colourwork section. I went up to a 2.75mm needle, and then I went back down for the rest of the sock. I did the same for the little toe section as well, so both of these colourwork sections I increased my needle size. I also tried a slightly different heel. So this is the Eye of Partridge heel, which I have never done before. It's very similar to a heel flap and gusset. The structure is the same, but you do a different slip stitch pattern. I thought it would be more obvious, and I find counting rows on an Eye of Partridge heel a lot more difficult. But I do like how it blends in with the rest of the sock a little bit more. I find the regular heel flap and gusset heel creates a bit more of a striping effect, whereas this, it does blend in more. I don't know if that's worth not being able to count my rows very well. TBC on if I will do this heel construction again. But overall, I'm utterly in love with these socks. I cannot wait to start wearing them now that I've shown them to you. I hope I'll be able to get a bit of wear out of them before it starts getting too warm. Next up is my Janne Yoga Socks by Bella Helms. I used Woolcraft Superwash sock in Blue Multi held double. I used 76 grams and I used a 3.5mm needle, and these took me 8 days to make. This has been a very sock heavy period, and after the 2 fingering weight socks, I decided to switch it up and make a DK weight sock. I may have forgotten how much of a difference in speed a double knit pair of socks compared to a regular pair of socks makes, especially one that doesn't have a heel or a toe. These were so quick and it felt like an absolute luxury. I have actually made these for a friend for their birthday, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. I hope that she likes them. I doubled up the yarn that I had to create a DK weight, and I was a little nervous about how it was going to pull because it is a variegated yarn, but I think it's really nice. It's created a really cool stripy mixed effect, and I don't mind too much that they don't match. I hope my friend doesn't mind it either. I really like how the mottledness turned out. This was a really simple pattern to follow, and I do recommend it as a gift knit because it was quick, it was easy, and really great for the people in your life that do yoga. This was a really mindless little project and super speedy. My next finished object is actually the object that I'm wearing. This is my Swirl Slipover by Twin Knits. I made this in Creative Anarchy's Comfort Base in the colour Toe Beans, as well as Knitting for Olive's Soft Silk Mohair in the colour Dusty Rose. I used 139 grams of the fingering weight yarn and 69 grams of the Soft Silk Mohair. This had a bit of a range of needles. I used 4.5 for the body. I used 3.75 for the body ribbing and 3.5 for the arms and neck ribbing. I knitted a size 4, which is an L, and this one took me 21 days. For those of you that did watch my Finish It February video, you will know that I didn't quite get this finished. The annoying thing was it took me 1 extra day, so I finished this on March 1st. So it didn't quite make it as a finished object in that video, but here it is now. This is the second time that I've made this pattern, and I really enjoyed it. It took me a little bit of time to get back into the cable repeat, but once I'd finished the back panel, which is the panel that you start with, my brain had remembered the rhythm of it and it became a lot easier. I utterly love this colour. I knitted a hood previously, which is where this yarn came from, so I already knew that I loved how the colour looked. But it's such a beautiful mottle between the hand-dyed fingering weight yarn and the Dusty Rose from Knitting for Olive. I really enjoyed how they complement each other and bring out certain colours of the yarn. This is already getting way more wear than my hood did. I have already worn this 3 times. I don't tend to wear pieces that I've finished before I've shown them on camera, so the fact that I kept coming to grab it and wear it already shows how much I love this piece and how much it is fulfilling its role as a piece in my wardrobe. So it was 100% worth unraveling the old piece and making this one. So I went for a size 4 because when I did my gauge swatch, it did come up a little bit small and I didn't want this vest to be too tight. It has created quite a nice amount of ease. I think I picked the perfect size. Next up is one of my scrap projects. This is the Frida headband by Emily Lewis. I used some scraps of the colouring yarn DK that I used for my cardigan. I forgot to weigh this yarn before I started, so I don't know how much I used. I did work with a 4mm needle, and this took me 11 days to make. So after working on 3 pairs of socks over the few months, I decided I needed a bit of a change and casted on a headband as my travel project. In the end, this turned out to be a little bit of a mistake. This headband is a fully double knit project. You double knit the whole way around and then seam it up in a little bit of a zigzag to create this knot at the front. I found the double knit just really dull. I think because you have to go back and forth and you're constantly switching your direction, it is a bit harder to get into that flow state with it. So I found this a little bit difficult, and there were days where I would rather not get it out of my bag, that I would sit on the tube and rather knit nothing than to work on this. So lesson learned, double knit tube is not my preferred travel project, but I think this makes a very cute finished object. It was a successful stash buster. I have used up some stash yarn. It does fit. I haven't probably tried it on. I'm a bit nervous about ruining my hair. Please ignore the silly hair, but it does fit. It's quite tight, which I think means it will keep my ears warm. And also it is made out of superwash yarn, so it will loosen over time. This pattern is free and it did do what it said on the tin, so it's a perfectly usable, lovely pattern. It just wasn't for me, and I don't think I can bring myself to make another one, at least not as a travel project. It is, however, a very cute headband. Next up is my Seaside sweater by Beth Knits. I made this out of Lang Yarn's Yarvol scraps. I'm unsure of the amount because I did not tot it up. I used 3mm and 2.5mm needles. I made the size 5, which is a 6 to 9 month size, and this took me 8 days. So I decided last minute to go see my parents for the weekend. They live in Ireland, so I needed a travel project that I could take with me on the plane. This pattern has been on my TBC scrappy project list for a while, and I thought it was a good opportunity to work through some of my scrap yarns. Here it is. I think it's pretty adorable. This is a petite knit pattern, so it's very easy to follow. Even this button band, which I hadn't made before, was really well explained and easy to work through, so no complaints on the pattern. This yarn has softened up quite a lot after blocking as well. I have used this for a sock before. I usually reserve this yarn for heels and toes because it's a little bit more rough than some of the hand-dyed sock yarns that I've used in the past, but it's really softened up very nicely in this little jumper. It's a really successful scrap yarn project, and I'll definitely be revisiting this pattern in the future. I raided my button stash for these cute yellow buttons. I had a few options, but decided, oh, crap. So it's a little later in the day. I unrealistically thought I had time to film before my friend came over for pancakes, but I did not. So it's a little bit later. I'm full of pancakes. My friend is now gone. Forgive me for the change of lighting. The sun is now really out, so the lighting's different. Things may have look a bit different. I'm sorry, let's carry on. I left off talking about my Seaside sweater by Beth Knits. I think I was showing off these beautiful buttons. I decided to go for yellow to match the yellow stripe, and I think it's really effective. I'm always really happy when I get to use buttons out of my stash because I have an ungodly amount of buttons for someone who doesn't sew, so I don't get to use them very often. I'm very happy I got to use 3 of them in this tiny little jumper. Yay! And with that, I have finally made it to my last finished object. I have been obsessed with making scrunchies. I've been using scrap yarn on 4mm needles, and each scrunchie takes me about 2 to 3 days to make. I have been making these on the tube. Staying on the scrappy train, I have been really enjoying picking bits of yarn out of my stash to make scrunchies. I've been using an amalgamation of a couple of patterns, but I've landed on casting on either 80 or 90 stitches, depending on how thick the yarn I'm using is. Knitting until about 9 to 11 centimeters, again, depending on how much yarn I have, and then picking up the cast on edge and casting off with it, so creating a closed loop. Obviously putting the elastic in before I do that. That's just the easiest way I have found to do them. I found some patterns that were asking for a provisional cast on or Judy's Magic cast on, and I just don't find doing that while traveling very easy. So this way I can just cast on normally and then pick up the stitches when I'm ready to cast off. So I have 3, and I'd like to show you the combinations that I've made. This one is a really nice navy blue one. This one is made out of Knitting for Olive's merino and soft silk mohair in the colour Blue Tit. And then on the same vein of like fingering plus fluff, I made this one, which is a 2-tone one, hey, out of Sandersgarn alpaca silk in the colour Cream. I don't know what number that is. This side is Majestic Fluff from Lay Family Yarns, and this side is Knitting for Olive's soft silk mohair in Dusty Pink. Obviously I ran out of the Lay Family Yarns Majestic Fluff, so I couldn't do a whole cream one, but that's fine. That's the nature of a scrappy project. And then the last one I made, which I think is my favourite, I used 3 strands of soft silk mohair by Knitting for Olive, 2 of the Dusty Rose and 1 of the Artichoke Purple. My partner has just gotten back from rowing and is taking a shower, and I film right next to the boiler, so I'm really hoping that this isn't totally distracting because I really need to film this video, so I'm going to push on. Apologies if you can hear the background noise. That's what that is. So we are done with finished objects. Thank you for bearing with. I do have a few whips, but 2 of them I'm not really going to talk about in this episode. First off, I've got my Fireplace Cat by Sarah Elizabeth Kellner. I have made no more progress since the last update of my Finish It February video. This is also the same for my temperature blanket. So if you would like to see how far I got with both of these projects, I would highly recommend going to see the Finish It February video. I'm not gonna show you them here because I already showed them in that video. The work in progress that I'm currently working on is the Polo number 1 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. I am making this out of Knitting for Olive's merino and soft silk mohair in the colour Unicorn Purple and Petroleum Green. And I'm making this in a size 6, which is a 2XL. The reason I'm making this size, which is a lot bigger than my usual size, is I want this to have quite a lot of positive ease. I'm basing it on a t-shirt that I've been finding the most comfortable to wear, and I have the idea of like an oversized rugby jersey style. So I'll show you where I'm at. I started this a couple of weeks ago, and up until last week it was going really well. I had started the raglan increases, and even the start of this collar was pretty okay. The main part of the collar is double knitting. I was enjoying it, I was happy enough with it. And then I hit the point where I had to attach this collar to the yoke and do the button bands. And for some reason, I found that part so difficult. I really struggled with it. I don't think the English translation for this pattern is very clear. I couldn't quite figure out which stitches I was being told to pick up or knit or put on hold. And it took me so long, and reading through the section of the pattern so many times before it finally clicked, and it was a very slow click. I was a bit disappointed because I'd found the rest of it okay up until that point. It's really put me off trying the more complicated My Favourite Things knitwear patterns, because this was such a struggle and I was having such a good time with it. But this construction is so new to me, I just needed it to be a bit clearer. But we got there, it's on. I finished with the collar and I'm so happy with how this is turning out. I have tried it on, I have slipped it on. My partner helped me by holding the knitting needles so the stitches didn't fall off, and it sits really nicely on the shoulder. So I'm super delighted with how this is turning out. I think this will be exactly what I was envisioning. I'm going to be knitting the body for the foreseeable future. This is knit on 4mm needles, so not the smallest needles, but not huge either, and I'm aiming for oversized, so this is gonna be a bit of a long one. I'm very happy with where it is now, but me and this polo had a bit of a fight last week. So that's it for my work in progresses, as I'm not gonna show you the other two. Again, go watch the Finish of February video. I don't have any yarn acquisitions, but I do have a project bag. I picked up this really cute toiletry bag, which is the same structure as the redesigned project bags. So it has a diagonal zip, which opens up with a little pocket in the middle and two sections. And I have been looking for a bag that I can take on my Easter trip to house my plot twist tank. And I think this is perfect. I did like the look of the redesigned bags, but they are a little bit out of my price range. And to be honest, if you have seen more of my channel and what I like to knit and my colour palette, I do prefer pastels. So when I saw this cute little floral blue and cream bag, I just thought this is way more me. It's making me really excited to wind up the yarn for my trip and do my little gauge swatch, which I will need to do next week. And by the time you're watching this, I will actually already be away. And I think this will be a really neat little project bag for my travels. I have mentioned my Easter trip a couple of times, both in this video and previous videos. For those interested, me and my netting partner are headed to Amsterdam, The Hague and Paris. And I am hoping to go to a few yarn stores while I'm out there. If you're interested in seeing my little yarny adventures while I'm away, then leave me a comment here and let me know that you'd like to see what I get up to. In general, I'm super excited to go. I'm very excited to take some time off. This particular period has been quite hard at work. It's been very busy and I'm just excited to get some downtime, be a tourist for a bit. We're also going on the Eurostar to and from, so my hope is that I will get in quite a lot of knitting. I'm not going to kid myself that I could get that tank top finished, but I might be able to get quite far. So we'll see how that goes. With that little ramble, that takes us to the end of this episode. Thank you for sticking with me through so many finished objects. Finish It February was incredibly successful, but it did mean I had an awful lot to talk through today. So I'm so grateful that you stuck around to watch me natter on. With the traveling over the next few months, I will be interested to see how that affects my knitting and how much I'm able to get done. So we will see what the next podcast episode holds. But for now, that's everything, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Bye!